Happy New Year, everybody. Yeah, Happy New Year. Welcome to the January 2nd, 2024 organizational meeting of the Arlington County Board. And I'm glad to have everyone here with us, either in person or I think there are probably some people joining virtually. And I'm delighted to welcome our two newest board members. We have Susan Cunningham and Maureen Coffey, and we're glad that they are here. The last time there was a majority of women on the board was 1983. About 40 years ago. Yeah, it's been a while. And I'll tell you, I'm not sure there's ever been such a wide generational gap. Maureen is the youngest ever elected. And I know Ellen Bosman retired at 72, which is what I am, but I'll be 73 in April. So I may be the oldest. I don't know. We're going to check that out. Certainly, we've got to have the broadest span. So we've got 3 generations here, which is really cool. You know, every New Year's a transition. This feels like more of a transition than some of them. It's definitely a transition. So let's get started. And first, we need to elect our chair. Is there a nomination for chair?
Ms. Vice Chair, I would like to nominate you to serve as our chair this year. And I guess we first would do if there's a second, and then I can offer just a few brief remarks.
Thank you.
I will be very honored to second that, Mr. DeFranti.
Thank you, Mr. Carantonis. Mr. DeFranti.
Thank you so much. Ms. Garvey, clearly, you are the person to serve as our chair this year. We are going through a significant transition, and you are the right fit to help steer us forward and to keep us moving forward. As you sometimes say when we're together, you say, we're going to be okay. And I think you serving as chair is exactly that right fit for the right moment. You stay focused on the big picture. You try to keep civility at the core of what we do. We won't agree on every last thing that we talk about, all of us, all 5 of us, but you will keep us moving forward and reflect all our views. So I'm happy and honored to nominate you to be chair.
Thank you, and I am honored with a nomination. Are there any other nominations for chair? Seeing none, there's a motion. It's been seconded. Is it all in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the kind words. I want to thank my colleagues for your confidence in me. It really is an honor and a privilege. This 3-generation board is really cool. We each bring perspectives and strengths, and it's going to be my job to make sure we maximize those strengths, and we're going to be a dynamite board. So thank you so very much. Next order of business, we now need a vice chair. I will entertain a motion for vice chair. Ms. Coffey.
I'd like to nominate Takis Karantonis.
Thank you. Is there a second?
And I'll second that.
All right, motion's been moved and seconded. Would you like to speak to your nomination at all, Ms. Coffey?
Only very briefly to say that Takis has been such a powerful civic influence, particularly for me over the past 6 years or so as I've gotten involved in the community. And I'm really grateful for his guidance and his experience on this board as we have 2 brand new members. And I think that it will be great to complement everything that we're doing to have both of you working together in our leadership.
Thank you. All right. I would be pleased to call for a vote if there are no other nominations. No other nominations. All in favor of Mr. Carantonis as our vice chair, please say aye. Aye. Motion
Aye.
passes 5-0. Congratulations, Mr. Carantonis.
Thank you. You won't believe it, but I'm really nervous. I'm not anymore the junior member of this board, and that means a lot. And it means to me, Maureen and Susan, serving on this board, previous board, and this board, I see that as a teamwork, is always a teamwork. The local politics is teamwork, even with our constituents. When we have issues that may seem controversial, the first order is to discuss them. And I'm really pleased to be co-piloting this next to a very, very experienced pilot. And that's going to be a very interesting and strong year. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm pleased to have you as my co-pilot. It's just great. Thank you. All right. I think we are now ready to move on to our third item, which is adoption of calendar year 2024 County Board meeting schedule. Is there a motion to adopt the schedule? I think it's Ms. Cunningham.
I will move to adopt the schedule as printed.
Thank you. And as attached to the December 29 board report, I think? Yes. Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Motion's moved and seconded. Any conversation, any comments about the calendar? I don't think it's too controversial. All right. All in favor for the adopting the motion on the floor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you all. We now have our schedule. Next comes adoption of the calendar year board meeting procedures. And I see we have some things back and forth. Ms. Cunningham, would you like to do this one as well?
Sure. So I will move for adoption of the 2024 County Board meeting procedures as reflected in the board report. There are some minor revisions included, especially to clarify the process for removing consent agenda items, the availability of agenda-related correspondence, and consolidating language related to online and in-person speaker forms. The board will also extend the deadline for submitting agenda-related correspondence to noon on Thursday before the board meeting, since we realized if you have a 9-to-5 job on Wednesday, you may have been skipping out of work. So is there a second for that?
I think I'm actually supposed to call for the second, but that's
Oh,
just
sorry.
fine.
We're
No,
still
that's
kind of
all
new
right.
here.
Mr. DeFranti will second it. It's fine. You could call for it. There's a second. Mr. DeFranti, a second. I would invite you to speak to your motion, but I think you may have done that already.
I think, if I may just add a bit more, I think we did make that extension, which my colleagues were very kind to consider, and we'll give it a try this year. That's section A7. And then no other changes, but we had some conversation and some clarifications. We talk about supplemental materials that can be added 24 hours ahead. The intent of that is really to not have it be at the very last minute, but only if there's an error or a correction. In some cases, those are notified to us by public comment that may not be available until Wednesday or Thursday. So just to give some context there. And then I think the last piece is section H3, translation services. We require a 3-day notice, which feels a little bit long in the modern world. We will be looking at that this year to see if we can improve our vendor for simultaneous translation. But it's not very easy because we cover a lot of topics, so we'll keep working on that.
That's great. Thank you. Any other conversation or discussion on the item? I want to thank Ms. Cunningham for going through and looking for some ways to improve what we're doing. It's always good to have new people and new eyes on things, so thank you very much. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. All right, we're off to a good start, guys. All right, I think that brings us to our adoption of the calendar year 2024 procedures for budget and tax rate public hearings. Is there a motion? Mr. Karantonis.
Yes. So Madam Chair, I am pleased to move adoption of the 2024 procedures for budget and tax rate public hearings as reflected in the December 28th, 2023 board report. The procedures are revised to change the time for which the in-person and online speaker closes from 8 p.m. to 7 p.m.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Motion's been moved and seconded. Any comments? Would you like to speak to your motion, Mr. Karantonis?
These are very important ones. This year, I hope that everybody will be very engaged in the budget process. We have seen increased engagement in the past, but this year it will be a tougher year with tougher choices and clearer prioritization about what is important, more important, or less important to fund. The budget always reflects our values. And therefore, I really think that it's important to take note of how the procedure of public hearing and input will work. That's my comment on that.
Thank you. Any other comment or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. And that brings us to the adoption of the calendar year 2024 tiebreaker resolution, which we're required to do this. And we do it the same pretty much every year. And I'll turn it over to our youngest member, I think. Ms. Coffey?
Madam Chair, I move the adoption of the tiebreaker resolution that reads, be it resolved that the Arlington County Board determines that there shall not be a tiebreaker whose duty it would be to cast the deciding vote in the case of a tie vote of the members of the Arlington County Board during the calendar year 2024.
Great. It has been moved and seconded. Any conversation? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Great, that takes care of our tiebreaker resolution. And we comes to regional and other appointments. Before I get there, I want to recognize Chair of the School Board, who I think has joined us, Christina Diaz-Torres. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And if I've missed anybody, and Miranda, no, Miranda is here, is she? Miranda Turner, are you? I don't see, well, you're hiding behind, I can, Matt can see you, but I can't. It's great. Thank you so much for coming. Great to have our school board with us, and as well as I know our Civic Federation that we're going to be talking with soon. That brings us to regional and other appointments, and there were a lot of them, and I apologize. I will read through them, which I think I need to do, so bear with me. I would move adoption of the following appointments to regional bodies. For the Council of Governments, and these terms expire December 31st, 2024, we appoint Libby Garvey to the Board of Directors, reappoint Takis Karantonis to the National Capital Region Transportation Planning Board, appoint Susan Cunningham to the Metropolitan Washington Air Quality Committee, reappoint Takis Karantonis to the Climate, Energy, and Environment Policy Committee, appoint Susan Cunningham to the Chesapeake Bay and Water Resources Policy Committee, appoint Maureen Coffey to the Human Services Policy Committee, appoint Maureen Coffey and reappoint Takis Karantonis to the Region Forward Coalition. Also reappoint Libby Garvey and Matt DeFerranti to the Food and Agriculture Regional Member Policy Committee. That brings us to the Northern Virginia Regional Commission, and I move that we reappoint Matt DeFerranti and Libby Garvey. These terms also expire on the end of this year, December 31st, 2024. Also, for terms that end December 31st, 2024, appoint to the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission Takis Karantonis and designate as the Virginia Railway Express Operations Board appointee from Arlington, reappoint Libby Garvey as the Virginia Railway Express Operations Board alternate appointee from Arlington, and reappoint Matt DeFerranti as the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority appointee from Arlington. All of these also have designates who are not designated at the moment. Continuing on. I move that we appoint to the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, again, the term ends in December 31st, 2024, Matt DeFerranti, and appoint Susan Cunningham to the NBTA Planning Coordination Advisory Committee. All right. I also move adoption of the following chair designations for terms ending December 31st, 2024, unless I note otherwise. To the Audit Committee, designate Takis Karantonis and Maureen Coffey as co-chairs. To the Civil Service Commission, designate George Bailey as chair. To the Climate Change, Energy, and Environment Commission, designate Joan McIntyre as chair. The Commission on Aging, designate William Way until September 30th, 2024, and Kathleen as chair, and designate Kathleen Cameron as vice chair until September 30th, 2024. To the Community Oversight Board, appoint Julie Evans as chair. To the Disability Advisory Commission, designate Elizabeth Priu, I think, I apologize on the name, as chair. To the Economic Development Commission, designate Bill Dunn as chair, designate Kevin Yam as vice chair. To the Fiscal Affairs Advisory Commission, designate Jillian Burgess as chair. To the Forestry and Natural Resources Commission, designate Phil Klingelhofer as chair. To the Historical Affairs and Landmark Review Board, designate Omari Davis as chair and designate K.D. Myers as vice chair. To the Housing Commission, designate Kellen Macbeth as chair. To the Human Rights Commission, appoint Angela Maloney to a term ending January 31st, 2027. To the Joint Facilities Advisory Commission, designate Stacy Snyder as chair and designate Wells Harrell as the vice chair. To the Partnership for Children, Youth, and Families, designate Janetta Brewer as co-chair and designate Dave Carlson as co-chair. To the Park and Recreation Commission, designate Jill Barker as chair and Shruti Krupa as vice chair. To the Planning Commission, designate Sarah Steinberger as chair. To the Public Facilities Review Committee, designate Nia Bagley as chair. To the Technology Advisory Commission, designate John Burke as chair and Frank Jazzo as vice chair. To the Tenant Landlord Commission, designate David Tim as chair. I don't believe that needs a second, if that's correct, when we make appointments. All right, all in favor of all of these wonderful people who've agreed to serve, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0 again. Thank you so much to everybody willing to help us out. This is a great thing, part of what keeps Arlington going. And that brings us to the chair's address, and we'll all make a few remarks about what we're planning to sort of concentrate on this year. And your chair needs a drink of water after all those appointments. Well, as I was preparing my remarks for today, I couldn't help but think back to January 2020 when I last became chair. So think back a bit. We just finished the agreement with Amazon. Our commercial office vacancy rate challenges were over. Our vice chair, Eric Gutschall, and I were looking forward to doing good things for Arlington. And I said then that equity, innovation, and resilience would be my focus for 2020. It was going to be an easy year. Then, Eric became ill in February, and he never came back. In March, the pandemic shut down the world. We all innovated. No one could do exactly what they'd done before. We set up studios in our homes for virtual meetings. In April, instead of budget work sessions, we held COVID briefings to share new information, which information changed constantly. Businesses closed practically overnight. Many Arlington employees changed their jobs. Vaccination centers were set up. Permitting was changed for outdoor dining. Nonprofits adapted to new needs. Residents created new assistance networks. Everyone turned to helping our community survive both economically and literally. The focus was on equity to make sure that everyone's needs were met. We innovated constantly to meet changing needs and circumstances, and we became more resilient. So here we are, 4 years later. The board is back together in one room, but virtual work is here to stay. Our office vacancy rate is a concern again. Federal pandemic assistance is done, but we still have people needing homes they can afford and food and medical care. Our needs are up and our revenues are down. We continue to innovate, but this year will not be an easy one. However, Arlington is up to the challenge, and we should be. We have many resources to meet our challenges. We have economic resources, even though that crucial pandemic financial help from the federal government, thank you, President Biden, has ended. And we have great human capital, which is us, all of us. We were resilient during the pandemic because our whole community, our government, and our residents pulled together to make sure that everyone, not just the well-off, had food, shelter, and medical care. We did things differently. A resilient community can adapt and cares for everyone in it. So, as we continue our transition this year to whatever is becoming normal, equity, innovation, and resilience will continue to be my general focus areas. However, there are two particular areas on which I will concentrate to make us more resilient. I'll go over those just briefly here. First, when times are tough, social resilience is critical. We need to all pull together, as we did during the pandemic. However, the missing middle debate showed last year that we do not have a clear vision for our future as a county that many people understand. Arlington has not done an overall future visioning process since the 1986 report, The Future of Arlington, the year 2000 and beyond. It's a good report, but we are now well beyond the year 2000. It's time for another visioning process to think again about where we want to go as a county and about what the big issues and challenges will be for us in, say, the year 2050. A socially resilient community knows where it wants to go. If we're clear about where we want to go, we can figure out what we need to do to get there. As much as possible, I think this visioning process needs to come from our community. So this year, using a variety of techniques, we will gather thoughts, suggestions, and ideas directly from as many people as possible, telling us what they want Arlington to be in the year 2050. I'm sure there are many different visions of what our county should be in 2050, and some of them are mutually exclusive. But I suspect that most will fall into 2 or 3 general vision buckets which we can present at the end of this year. To start things off, on February 5th, we will host a panel discussion with a climatologist, Jason Samenow of the Washington Post, a demographer, Hamilton Lambert of the Weldon Cooper Center, and a business executive, Holly Sullivan of Amazon. Each will talk about what they see for our region in 2050 and what that might mean for us now. Invitations will be going out soon. While attendance is limited, the discussion will be live streamed and recorded for later viewing. My second specific focus for this year is energy resilience. In all the news of horrible natural and man-made disasters this year, a constant storyline is the lack of electric power. Modern life depends on electricity. We need it for communications, transportation, food and water, medical care, and to keep our homes safe for us when it's very hot or very cold. Modern cities depend on electricity for life. Without power, people die. Now, Arlington's been focusing for years on energy conservation and using renewable energy to help our environment. While not moving as fast as we might like, we are making progress. But still, whether it comes from wind, a solar farm, or from a source that uses fossil fuel, nearly all our energy comes to us through a large and complex power grid. So watching the news this year with my 95-year-old mother, I started to think about the grid on which we all depend. There are redundancies in the system, but we have outages every year. There are a lot of vulnerabilities in a big complex system with miles and miles of wires and many transmission stations. So what's the possibility that we will never have a really big storm, a paralyzing cyber attack, a coordinated physical act of violence, or just plain old human error to cause a major power failure? The probability of any specific event may be low, but it's quite likely that something will happen to cause widespread power outages, if not this year, within the next decade. Just since I've been on this board, we've experienced the derecho of 2012 and the flash flood of 2019, among other things. And then we need to think what happens if this power outage is during a severe cold or very hot spell. And what if it lasts a long time? We would all be pretty uncomfortable at best, but for the very young, the very old like my mother, and those in poor health, a long power outage could be fatal. We are not energy resilient. Those with the fewest resources would be the most vulnerable in a long power outage. It's great that there are more and more solar roofs in Arlington, but few of those roofs are connected to a battery that can send power back into the home. When the grid goes down, most of those homes cannot access the power they're producing. There are backup generators in some public and private buildings, but not many, and most of those generators require fuel deliveries to run for very long. We're not energy resilient, but we can be. We just need a little more innovation with an eye to equitable energy resilience. On the government level, we can do a lot more to make our county and school buildings energy resilient so they could help residents should the grid not function. And, grid or no grid, we could save money and energy. Energy resilience is good for us and the environment. On the individual home level, those with solar roofs could get batteries to store and then provide back the power they produce. Battery power for a whole house is pretty expensive, but a small battery for a few crucial things is not so expensive. Those without solar roofs could have just a single small panel and a small battery to, again, perhaps run some crucial things, to charge a cell phone and a computer, to power a light or a small window air conditioner. Today, this is not easy for anyone to figure out, especially if you're on a tight budget. But it is not rocket science. With some good information and some help, I think many of our residents could be energy resilient if they would like. We need to provide them with good information and support to do this. And we can do it. Future resilience, both social resilience and energy resilience, is the goal. Equity and innovation can get us there. So I am excited about this year. Thank you all so much for coming. I'm looking forward to working with our great staff. We've got wonderful staff, this new multi-generational board team, and our residents, all of you all, to make Arlington better and more resilient than ever. Thank you so much. Thank you. And now over to you, Mr. Karantonis.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Vice Chair Karantonis.
Thank you. Indeed, you started reminiscing the situation of 2020, and I have to say, we thought we were living in interesting times back then. We continue to live in interesting times today, and 2023, I have to say, did not disappoint. The world has become significantly more violent, unstable and unpredictable. Democracy is under assault everywhere. The onset of the climate catastrophe is actually very real. Artificial intelligence this year, a very dominating factor, is the riskiest technology of this century so far. And kitchen table concerns remain: cost of living, astronomical rents, lack of childcare, affordable childcare options, excessive cost of healthcare, racial and economic inequalities. 2023 was not a walk in the park. It was a challenging year indeed, and yet it was also the year we could clearly see the way ahead. I have to tell you, nothing filled me with more optimism than the emergence of an entire national movement fighting to reinstate women's reproductive rights, which proves the point that when civic societies stand united for what is right, remain resilient. And I always think of Arlington as a place of such resilient values. I see my role and work and focus this year in translating community priorities into places that invite people in and take more people with. So these are my priorities for this 2024, despite the fact that we said that we in local government are generalists and Swiss Army knives kind of people. For number one, on climate. I plan to work on two fronts. First of all, decarbonizing buildings, transit, and transportation. We're entering the third year of our community energy plan implementation, and this is really the moment for updating our green building incentives, of positioning Arlington and the region to absorb as much, as well, and as fast as possible federal climate program dollars, getting sizable and meaningful electrification pilot for our art bus fleet, and making tangible progress on this famous EV charging infrastructure we all aspire to see in our public realm. The second area is renaturalizing our urban space. From green roofs to achieving our ambitious tree canopy goals, nature is not an antagonist of the urban system. It is rather a critical component of it. And again, climate response is a whole society issue, and therefore it has to be truly a whole government issue, like it has been for equity. On housing, despite significant progress, the rent continues to be too damn high for most Arlingtonians. We are hardly delivering on the promise for a market that provides a variety of housing options for a diverse community like ours. Not despite, but because 2024 is a year of competing fiscal priorities where there is a cost in prioritizing what really matters to our community, I stand for a significant financial commitment to the Affordable Housing Investment Fund. $1.50 of dedicated additional tax support is an appropriate and timely proposition for the next fiscal year. On to Metro. Funding Metro is not optional for Arlington. Neither it is optional for Northern Virginia nor the metropolitan region. Any reduction of the level of service risks sending Metro into a deadly tailspin and inflicting major, significant economic harm to us. The time is ripe to settle on a reliable source of revenue for the system. 2024 will be also a year that we will be rethinking, rather than just updating, our master transportation plan. Pedestrian and cyclist safety has to be central to our street design. Streets are safe when they are designed for people, not predominantly for cars. And this requires us to do some extra work and go a little bit beyond the engineering manuals. On our economy, high office vacancy rates triggered our Commercial Market Resiliency Initiative 2.0. The work is cut out for us. Zoning needs to become reasonably more flexible and less burdensome. We need to be innovative and courageous in repositioning and reusing obsolete buildings. We have to provide tangible support to our small businesses, and most importantly, for me, this year, bringing employment back to the front of attention. Our most valuable renewable resource and key competitive advantage is the skill and professional capacity of our residents. Finally, for our social fabric, social solidarity matters. The way we intervene when food or house security is at stake, when mental health is at stake, or when a drug epidemic severely impacts our youngest matters. Narcan training saves lives. Making sure that the continuum of services and resources is reliable in place so that no person is left behind or alone saves entire communities. And this systemic approach is what we should be pursuing. I believe in public-private partnerships, but I also believe in a government leadership in delivering programs that set the frame for providing this social safety net that deserves the name and truly serves the people. So a few concluding thoughts. 2024 is a year of inflection for our nation and possibly for the entire world. In Arlington, we are holding high the values our officers defended on the west side of the Capitol of the United States on January 6, 2020. the values of democracy, the rule of law, of equity, justice, and liberty for all, of accountable governance, and of civic and civically minded debate, for all of which the chair's Arlington 2050 Strategic Visioning Initiative provides a very appropriate and opportune place for civic engagement this year. I want to invite you to make 2024 an exemplary year of the civility and humanity that Arlington values convey. It is not an exaggeration. Literally, the entire nation and probably the entire world is watching us. Thank you. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Mr. Karantonis. Now, Mr. DiFerranti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening and Happy New Year. I will, as I pull up off my screen so I'm looking at you, I want to not just down, I want to take a second. On the way in, I noticed, I was introduced to Mr. Karantonis' mother, who is here in the audience. And I just would ask that we just give her a hand, and if you could wave, you should be so proud of your son, please. Her commute may have been a little longer than my mom's commute from McLean. So, on December 18th, my wife and I welcomed a baby girl, Evelyn Margot DiFerranti, to our family. In the moments when I am not transfixed and simply staring at her, or trying to be a dad worthy of her, or a husband worthy of my wife, Brooke, I found myself reflecting on how I can focus on what matters most in my service on the board. Time is precious. Here's what I think that will be in 2024. First, our new board must work well together. The start of this year marks a transition for 2 new board members. I just want to say again myself, I am welcome Ms. Coffey and Ms. Cunningham to the board, and I am looking forward to working with both of you for sure. Second, the first 6 months of the year, I think, will require a critical focus on a difficult budget and on our capital improvement plan. The capital improvement plan is our means for investing in the key physical and capital infrastructure we need to serve our community over the long term. On our budget, the first 3 to 4 months of the year through April, we just passed April 2nd and April 4th as towards the end of our budget process, will be about addressing ongoing fiscal challenges. The office vacancies are a new reality that have come from the pandemic paradigm shift of working from home. In January or early February, we will learn if the decreases in the value of our office property base will lead to where we'll fall between a projected deficit somewhere around 20 million that could rise as high as 40 million. That will be sobering news, or perhaps hopeful news. Why is this budget more difficult than our last? Haven't we known about the work from home paradigm shift for 2 years? Well, we have, but the office assessment process and that market is based on 5 and 10 and 15-year leases. So this year we're seeing the reality come home to us, and it will be a challenging budget year for that reason in part. It's also true that Arlington has a greater percentage of our budget that is based on office occupancy by far than all of the rest of Northern Virginia. There's some folks who are catching up. We depend on our office vacancy rate, which leads to a lower tax rate than our surrounding localities in Northern Virginia. We cannot betray our community's commitment to each other by ducking the hard choices, and we must continue to make investments in our shared priorities as a community. Our capital needs through the capital improvement plan will make April, May, and June quite busy. This is every other year we take up the CIP. The debates over schools, roads, parks, and critical capital infrastructure should both be looked at through an equity lens and reflect the reality that we must invest in our entire community. Third, I'll touch on policy areas, and last, I'll touch on a few policy areas that I will focus on throughout the year: economy, housing, schools, and young people, climate, hunger, transportation, and equity. I will try to be brief. On our economy, Our office vacancy rate is as high as it has been in decades due to the paradigm shift of working from home. We must continue to invest our time and energy in the structural changes we need in our economy. We have an extraordinary workforce, structural advantages of Fuse at Mason Square, Amazon, a strong tourist economy, and being a great place to live. We need to use those advantages, but also make the hard choices to evolve economically. On housing, Mr. Carantonis mentioned a couple of areas, sort of alluded to workforce housing. I know this is a shared priority of all of ours. I am deeply interested, and I have written here how important investing in the Affordable Housing Investment Fund is. I'm glad that you added some specifics, and I will be listening for those and fully open to them. I also look forward to working on home ownership. That's related to workforce housing, and we have a home ownership study that's ongoing. Housing will continue to be a priority. On our schools and our young people, I will be looking in part, there's the budget piece, which our two school board members will be happy that I am focused on. We need to invest. We need to do so wisely. There is such a need to take our schools to the next level. It is also important that we are all rigorous in our analysis and in our work with respect to our funding for our schools, which have been such a gem for Arlington. I look forward to working with you, Ms. Cunningham, and all my colleagues on a new line of business that we talked about a couple months back, which is how do we serve our young people who are in need, who are facing mental health and substance abuse challenges and are at real risk. On childcare, that's an area where I care deeply and perhaps in a different way, given the December 18th birth of my daughter. But it is an area we made progress in. We have a NOFA that is out. I look forward to you working with you, Ms. Coffey, in this particular area. On climate, yesterday's Post gave a new term that 2023 might have been the time that the climate is boiling. And it is such an urgent issue, one of the two defining issues along with equity of our time. We need bolder action to reach our 2035 goal of 100% renewable electricity in Arlington. That means transitioning to electric buses, in my view. It also means investing in our stormwater utility, and it means critical other steps on biophilia, and as you mentioned, Mr. Carantonis, the green building incentive policy. I think that we can make progress there even with our economic challenges. Last, on climate, we have talked a number of times from this dais. Almost all of the work that we as a community have to do on climate is not something that county government directly controls. We have 5% of the energy usage in the county. The other 95+% are individual decisions. What will I say to Evelyn when she's 30 about what I did on climate? What can we do to accelerate our work in this critical area? I'll be working on that. How do we make community decisions, trying to use the bully pulpit? And I think that energy resilience is an area that we can overlap on, Madam Chair. On hunger, AFAC has reported unprecedented, that is significantly greater hunger, greater need from families now than during the middle of the pandemic. We need to make additional investments in the short term in food, in my view. We also must continue to build the infrastructure, the social infrastructure, to better address hunger. That means I'll be supporting grants, mini grants as they're called, but it also means working on problems of direct certification across programs that can help with hunger. On transportation, Metro is something that we have all talked about. The backbone of Arlington's economy is Metro. I'll be serving as chair of the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission this year. Failure is not an option. Yes, we do need to get to a long-term solution. We also are going to have to engage with our partners in the legislature in order to seek funding that I think will be critical for a short-term solution in the next year or two, since I'm not sure yet as to whether this administration is currently persuaded as to the need for investment there. On equity, two particular things that I want to focus on. It remains a critical priority for me. We must invest in addressing some of the issues at our jail. I look forward to taking over the chairmanship of the Community Criminal Justice Board that can work on critical interception points where we can appropriately divert people from jail and better address the pressing mental health and substance abuse challenges I mentioned earlier. That's a lot, and it stretches quite a bit, my pledge to focus on what matters most. If you have 10 number one priorities, perhaps you don't have any number one priorities. My commitment is to do my best to work with the urgency that having a daughter demands for her future and yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ferranti. And now, Ms. Coffey. If you, I mixed it up a little bit just to, let's go back and forth.
Okay.
Go ahead, take it away.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. Happy 2024. The new year is a time of both reflection as well as resolution. And as I reflected and started preparing for this meeting, I feel so much gratitude to my fellow board members, both those here on the dais and those who have come before me and helped to create the Arlington that we know and love today. Gratitude to our staff who do so much work day in and day out, to those of you who join us this evening in person and virtually, and of course, more broadly, to this community that we all get to call home. My reflections got me thinking about the values that, alongside gratitude, guide me and my thinking. Empathy, care and kindness, community, equity, and justice. And so I want to use these reflections and these values to set some intentions and resolutions for this year, but also for the next 4 years in my time as a board member. I want to listen with empathy, seeking to understand the many perspectives and lived experiences across our community. I think we could all learn a lot if we spent more time thinking about why we don't think the way someone else thinks, rather than why someone else doesn't think the way we think. I want to ensure that we take care of those who need us, especially when difficult choices need to be made, and remember those who are on the receiving end of our decisions from up here that may not be us ourselves. And to regularly consider who is and is not part of each conversation and work actively to bring more voices to the conversation itself. With these intentions in mind, we have a lot of specific issues to tackle this year. I think livability is front of mind for so many here in Arlington, encompassing both the cost and quality of life. People in Arlington are surviving. They are not thriving in so many cases. Housing affordability and access, whether renting or owning, feels exhausting and impossibly stressful for so many people who are living in our community. Costs continue to go up, inventory continues to be low, especially relative to the demand for our community. We need to make investments both in proper noun affordable housing, like AHIP, but also more broadly in the full spectrum of housing affordability for everyone in our community. Childcare availability and costs are a pervasive issue. The 2018 Child Care Initiative has had substantial impacts to help improve our number of slots, but as I am at the fun point in my life where so many of my friends are having children, I have a front row seat to what it costs in our community to find childcare. Folks are getting on wait lists when they've just found out that they're pregnant, competing for the chance to pay thousands of dollars, often thousands of dollars per month, just for a safe, quality place for their child to go. That is not realistic for many families, especially in our community. And it has very real impacts. Women bear the brunt of that in their careers and their economic futures. And low-income children lose out on critical opportunities for learning and development. The vast majority of the learning gap is already evident when children reach kindergarten, meaning what happens from birth to 5, the lack of early care and education opportunities in our community impact children for the rest of their schooling careers and the rest of their lives. Transportation is another basic building block of our lives. Metro currently is running more trains and more frequently than it has in years, and that's amazing. As a Metro rider, I have appreciated that significantly. But the world continues to change and challenge us, and so this year we really need to make a commitment to funding our public transit because it is both an economic and an environmental imperative. At the same time, safety in transportation is also front of mind, making sure we commit ourselves to Vision Zero, that no one should die or be critically injured on our streets is really important for so many people. We will need to do more to address our commercial real estate market. I'm really grateful to be coming in with the work that has already been done, and I'm really excited about pushing forward the Commercial Market Resiliency Initiative 2.0 because we've already worked through a 1.0. The world has changed pretty permanently over the last several years, and we do need to embrace an economic development strategy that moves us forward into the future, thinking about things differently than we have in the past, thinking about the world as it will be and not the world as it was. Climate change is an ever-urgent crisis. We are lucky in Arlington to see this as a shared priority, one that is truly integrated across everything that we do and not just a singular policy area shielded off from other things. I look forward to continuing our goal of a carbon neutral community by 2050 and making sure that green space is not mutually exclusive with the other priorities that we share as a community. And lastly, I think we need to make progress on better public engagement. That doesn't just mean more quantity, though in some cases more engagement is helpful. We need to be intentional and we need to be strategic. We need to build systems that have no wrong door to get involved, and we need to make sure that the way we respond and engage with people encourages participation rather than discourages participation. As our chair mentioned, this year will involve much thinking about our collective future in the long term. This is really important work that we get to do to create the community that we all want together. I see this as an opportunity to be proactive in combining all of the many different priorities we have, as we've all listed them off here so well. In the short run, most things are fixed and pretty difficult to change. But when we think bigger and further out, we have the opportunity to dream a little bit. And hopefully, in this process, follow that dream up with a blueprint and the policy of how we're actually going to get there. I really look forward to doing this work with all of you, both up here and out in the community. And I thank you so much. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Ms. Coffey. And before I turn it to Ms. Cunningham to close us out this evening, I want to mention that Tanya Talento has joined us. I spotted you way back there. Thank you so much, our former colleagues. Great to have you with us here. Thank you. Yep. Is Kim Klingler here too? Who else is here? Yes, our new Commissioner of the Revenue, Ms. Klingler. Wonderful to have you. Anybody else I'm missing that I should introduce? I think I should probably introduce all of you, but we'll look at that. All right. Thank you. Thank you all so much for being here. And now, Ms. Cunningham, you want to close us out this evening?
Absolutely. Back cleanup. Well, good evening. This is my second day and first official meeting as your 75th county board member. And I have been reflecting on what it means for Arlington to be, as we say in our current vision statement, a world-class community. So one definition of community is a place that's considered together with its inhabitants, people and place. Another, though, is the feeling of fellowship with others as a result of shared common goals. And I think we've nailed and will continue to nail that first definition. But like most communities, we have a lot of work to do on the second. We definitely have the world-class people and places, and more of them every day, with 237,000 residents, over 200,000 jobs, to 27,000 great public school students from hundreds of countries. And then our places, 120,000 homes, 42 million square feet of office space, some of it occupied, and almost 1,500 acres of parks, all within almost everyone's home, a 10-minute walk. Yet in 2024, we can and should build a much more resilient world-class community through connection. The US Surgeon General last year declared an epidemic of loneliness, calling for strengthening our social infrastructure and building a culture of connection. And more recently, Senator Chris Murphy proposed a national strategy on social connection. And we can really focus on that here in Arlington. So why does it matter? We know that connection improves public health, maybe our most important measurement as a community. It's the best antidote to loneliness, hopelessness, and addiction. For elders, disconnection increases dementia risk by 50%. For teen girls, 57% have experienced depression in a year, and 30% have contemplated suicide. And here in Arlington, with the latest numbers, near the year end, we'd had over 69 overdoses, 20 of them fatal. So this is real. This connection and anything we can do is really important. Secondly, connection fosters a shared vision, as several people have noted. Planning and vision is crucial to managing change, and we have a lot of change for both residents and businesses, from housing and office reinvention to transportation and stormwater. And as Chair Garvey mentioned earlier, our last community vision document was penned in 1986, which literally is before most Arlingtonians were born. Connection also strengthens long-term sustainability with clear priorities, transparent trade-offs, and careful resource use, whether that's energy and land or taxes and time. They help us connect as a community and sustain a resilient world-class community for the future. So what are my priorities? I look forward to working with my colleagues and our regional leaders and each of you and our whole community on 3 areas. One is to connect our people. To do that, we can build on our existing programs like sports and arts, neighborhood villages, the Teen Network Board, and a host of others to enhance our youth out-of-school programming, volunteerism, public safety, mental health delivery, and our safety net. Secondly, refine our housing investments and planning. We must closely monitor and refine the initial expanded housing options program and explore other tools, including property tax deferrals, land trusts, and incentives for reuse to better meet our broader housing needs. Along with that, we should revisit our planning priorities from lot coverage and special GLUPs to East Falls Church and office property reuse, look at our fees and our time spent, as well as our permit and inspection turnaround time. So lastly, we need to focus on using our resources efficiently. There's nothing like a tough budget year to help you study priorities, really focus on return on investment, and look at trade-offs to get the best value for our community, whether it's energy efficiency or service levels. So I'll leave you with this. World-class places and people are great, but not enough. We also need sustained connection to be the world-class community that we envision. That takes invitation to all the voices, a lot of effort, and a lot of showing up from all corners of our community. That's all of us, not just the 5 up here. So in 2024, I invite you to engage and re-engage with each other, to listen and question, to deliberate and argue, and ultimately compromise so that we can support our people and steward our resources. Connection begins with each of us. On my desk, I keep a photo of Maya Angelou and a teenage student at the Maya Angelou School in DC. It was taken very near the end of Angelo's life and just at the start of the probably 16-year-old's journey. I can still feel the energy of that evening on U Street sitting next to them as they connected and inspired each other. We can also do that for each other as we work together to create and sustain this world-class, connected Arlington that is a great place to live, work, and play today and well into the future. So I'll leave you with Angelo's own words. I've learned that people will forget what you said. Perhaps you've already forgotten 5 speeches already, but that's okay. And people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So as we celebrate this start of the year, let's commit together to investing in connection to strengthen our world-class community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cunningham. Well, in case you're wondering, we don't actually coordinate all that much, but it all kind of fits together. This is great. Appreciate all the remarks, appreciate everyone being here. If there's no objection, this meeting is adjourned. I don't think there's anything else to come before the board for this meeting, organizational meeting. However, in the atrium, I believe there's some snacks out there. We invite everyone to join us out there, and then we'll be back here at 7:30 and have our annual meeting with the Civic Federation, which we're looking forward to. So see all of you out in the atrium. Thank you so much for coming. Happy New Year.
Well done. Well done, Madam Chair.